So hi again, my name is Mikhail. I work in Eindhoven for a company called Strata Europe. So I'm here today to talk, of course, about Aurelia, but mostly about the way we use it in our product called Trip Monitor. I'll explain what it is later. So very short agenda. I'll explain what the application is about. I'll give a tech overview, like which Aurelia parts and which modules we use. I'll do the demo of the product itself, and then there will be time for questions. I hope you have some, and otherwise I can keep talking for a long time, I guess. So let's start. Yeah, thanks. So for the background, the company has started Europe. We are working in logistics and transportation industry. So it's we are making software and hardware products for transportations and logistics companies. So it's business to business. There's nothing online that you can go after the presentation and check out yourself. So ask questions now. Yes, mostly the background of the team is in .NET. So before Aurelia, it used to be all .NET, C#, so WPF, Silverlight, stuff like that. Not much, yes, not much experience. So when we were about to start this product, we were kind of not very experienced with modern JavaScript and single-page application frameworks. But we were lucky that the application is greenfield, so we could start from scratch, and we had some time to find and to learn based on our previous small experience. The project started about 1.5 years ago, quite long time. Aurelia was in some preview back then. So when we started, we evaluated several frameworks like Angular, React, and so on. But somehow we liked Aurelia, and we thought the project would be for at least half a year and a year before the version 1. So we assumed that Aurelia will catch up during that time. It took longer than we expected, but the project also took longer, so hey, that's fine. Just to illustrate what we do in one screenshot, that's the map. Basically, we track the trips. Some logistics operator wants to transport something from Dublin to Amsterdam. They hire a transport company for this, and they say that they should pick up the load at 10 o'clock today, and they should be there on time at 12 o'clock tomorrow. And then what the system does, it tracks the progress of this movement or trip, and it constantly updates the estimated time of arrival. On this screenshot, it's like 2.5 hours early is our prediction, so it goes well. And if something wrong, then the operator of the system wants to know as soon as possible that it doesn't go well and take action, or at least know that the load is going to be late, and then they can delay some other steps or whatever. So as soon as everything goes fine, that's the level where that they want to stay, even without the map, just see expected time. When things go wrong, they want to dig deeper, see what might be the reason, if they can improve something or not. And of course, there are hundreds of thousands of those trips going on at any given time. So it's important to prioritize the problematic trips over good ones, and so on. So that's our domain. I think that's enough of a level for you to know for today. So the tech stack, obviously we use Aurelia, otherwise I wouldn't be here. We use TypeScript for all the code. We started with TypeScript from day one, I guess partly because we use C# and we want some types. Otherwise it's not very secure, doesn't feel secure, right? TypeScript also evolved quite a lot during that time, but we are trying to catch up. We use gulp. There was no Aurelia CLI back then, sorry. So we just picked Aurelia navigation template or something like that and based everything on it. We customized it for our needs, created several gulp tasks. But overall, it looks more or less the same. So we use GSPM with System.js. We use a lot of SignalR because the system is more or less real time, not like hardware time, but people don't want to click refresh every minute to know what's going on. That gives some complexity on UI as well, that's why I mentioned it. We do write a lot of unit tests. We use Karma and Jasmine for that. I think we have about 2,000 unit tests at the moment. And they run in 2 seconds, which is amazing to me. Usually C# tests take 2 minutes somehow. We also use Selenium for end-to-end test automation. So when the app is actually deployed to some test environment, we can run scenarios, much less of them than unit tests, of course, but they cover the basic flow. And we use VS Code as editor. So that's a list of Aurelia modules, which I copy-pasted from our package.json. The left part, I think it's more boring. Pretty much everyone uses it, I guess. The right part may be a bit more fancy. I can talk about them in more details. For example, we use Aurelia Auth for authentication, JWT-based authentication authorization. We use Aurelia event aggregator a lot to talk like different controls to send messages to each other. Like we get something from SignalR and then it broadcasts every message to everyone, and then depending on which page you are now, it will react differently. Our application is on 6 languages right now, and it's going to be 20, so we use Aurelia i18n for localization, where it works very well for us. New language is just a new JSON file, and then everything almost works. You need to be careful with string lengths and stuff like that, and singular, multiple verbs, whatever. We struggled a lot with control for the grids. We started with several attempts, like we did Candor, Bridge. It didn't work for us because of SignalR updates. It didn't perform well enough. And also API felt like dated and not really matching with Aurelia. Then for some time we've been using just a pure repeater, or rather virtual repeater, because our grids can be like several thousand items, and then normal repeater doesn't perform, but UI virtualization did the trick for some time, but again we faced problems with SignalR updates. When you update a lot of stuff in the repeater, it kind of breaks down. So at the moment we use Aurelia vgrid. We use it in a very weird way. We only use it for showing a row of 1 column and virtualization. We don't use any other features of it, because all the other features like sorting and ordering, filtering were created before we started using it, so we just plugged it as kind of replacement for UI virtualization. So that's the story. We use gulp for everything, as I said. So gulp builds the application, TypeScript into JavaScript. Gulp TDD is a nice command when you write unit tests and code at the same time to get immediate feedback. We use linter, so all the code is linted and we get warnings. Sometimes it's quite a challenge to get rid of warnings which come from the libraries which we use, but yeah, we can ignore them somehow. And gulp watch is the command again when you develop something. It watches the files, but also it mocks our backend API for us. So we have a folder with mock files, and we can run our front end without any backend with gulp watch. Very productive. I like it a lot. Again, compared to something like WPF or SQLite. I think they improved WPF now. But you don't have to recompile, wait, reload, go to that page again. You just change the file, wait a couple seconds, and then it's refreshed. And gulp export is for bundling, minification, and what Jeroen told us basically preparing the build for staging or production environment. So let's do the demo. I'm not showing you production data because they are some customers. So I'm running in command line. I hope you see the same. Yeah, I'm running. That's not the right window. Gulp watch in one window, so I can go to my browser and do stuff like. No, I cannot. What's this one? Yes. Let's just start from scratch. What? Almost. So if I go to, so that's my local development environment. All the data are mocked, so I don't talk to any backend at the moment. They are all fake. I cannot change anything, but that's enough for most scenarios. So I'm already logged in. That's the navigation menu on the left. The active screen is monitoring the one where you track your trips and movements. And that's the main grid, where you can see each line is a trip. It scries basically screams whether it's good or not with colors. If something is red, you should pay attention. You can also see that there is a hierarchy here. Some trips consist of multiple legs. So you can go from A to B to C to D, and people want to manage this as one thing because it's most probably one load. So you can expand them, and this is all done with our custom code. That's our custom component which does that. You can sort. If you have multiple things to sort, it will ask you what you want to sort on. Otherwise, just sort, sending. There is free text search. You can search for anything that you see here. Whatever, all columns. Also, there are filters which are pre-created. So, for example, if I want to see all the vehicles in Germany, I don't have any, but that's the way to filter out. Maybe this is easier to show on the staging environment which I'm connected to. So that's still not real data, but some movements, trips which I created this morning. I have some meaningful filters here. For example, if I want to see all the movements in the Netherlands, I click on this thing and I get them. And if I want to create a new one which does this for France, there is a pop-up here. I can do I can set up the filters which I want in this dialog. So you can see that's a multi-selecting, so I can pick Denmark as well. And only, for example, problematic trips which are late or don't have GPS, for example.
So this is averaging someone needs to act upon probably, right?
Yeah, so then I will get this one, I call it France. Here I can do multiple. If I want to see France and late, I can select those. So that's quite nice. Yeah, so there are, every menu item here is more or less the same grid, but just different perspective on the same data. Or, for example, here you can see all the trips which are already finished And if I want to see trips for my vehicle, it's filtered out to the one which I control, for example, or all the trips which are completed. A bit different flavor of the grid. No, not this one. This one. So these are pre-configured routes, how you should go from A to B. Doesn't really matter. But they are more ad hoc, like you can select something here, left side changes. But also the content in the grid, it depends on which data you have in the content of the filter depends on which data you have in the grid. So the drop downs are like pre-populated when you load the page.
Do you send signals between, or system admins are having fun? Do you send signals between them if you set something, or is it directly filtered?
Yeah, that's I believe that's just based on binding.
Ah, okay, so you can bind changes.
Yeah. So this whole thing is one control.
Ah, okay.
It has two components there, and it loads the data and it binds them to both places. But for example, I think the quick filters which I showed before, they are more isolated and they send signals. Yes, so there are some dialogues here, like, for example, that's not a good environment. You can create, for example, notifications for yourself when something goes wrong. So there is a dialogue to create an SMS template. When something goes wrong, you can subscribe to out-of-corridor notifications, and you'll get an SMS every time your vehicle leaves the corridor. What else?
I have a question. How
Sure.
do you get the signals? I mean, when something arrives at somewhere, like some load arrives in Amsterdam and it needs to go to Germany, how do you get those signals? Like, how do you know that it arrived in Amsterdam?
Yeah, so there is a Signal R subscription here. When you start the application, the backend, you connect to Signal R, you say which customer you are, which user you are. Based on that, he knows what are you interested in and which permissions do you have. And then every time there is a new position or something from the vehicle, it broadcasts it to all subscribers in Signal R. And then in Aurelia there is a service which listens for Signal R updates. That one broadcasts them to event. What's the name of the aggregator? Yes, thank you. And then, for example, the monitoring grid.
Signal R is something that either does WebSockets, I believe.
Yeah, it's WebSocket.
Or anything related to that only from .net.
Yeah, Socket.io from Microsoft, basically.
Sorry?
It's Socket.io from Microsoft.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, indeed, it works in sockets. If I'll get offline, I'll get a bar saying that you are not online anymore because you're disconnected, and then you can reconnect again. But they work on WebSockets every time there is a notification. There is basically a JavaScript call down there. So the APIs are really simple. You just need to, based on the name of the event, you just need to understand what you got and how to react. I'll get everything filtered out. But yeah, this is not very live data, but when I get a new position here, this one will blink and I will see that it's now late 10 minutes. And we actually do have a lot of updates. When I load it for a big customer, I get like 2 or 3 updates per second on average. Because every vehicle is sending on average 1 position per minute, maybe per 2 or 3 minutes. So if you have 1,000, you get several per second, which you need to blink. So when we try to load all those data and start updating them just like in the repeater, in HTML, it was eating all the memory on CPU on the machine. But the grid control does it nicely, this part. All these tricks, they are just our own controls. That's not from the grid control. Also because we try to be responsive. So if you're on a small screen, yeah, if I just expand it and then start making it smaller, the columns resize, but also you get less columns. Like if you're on a small tablet, you will only see the 3 important columns, and then you can click through. So for every moment you can click on it if something is wrong, and then the page comes with a map. So here you can see where the vehicle is. It's somewhere off-road, but anyway. Oh, it's a night time. And then you can see that when this happened, what got wrong or right, what was the speed of the vehicle and so on. And you can see the whole history here. So you can more or less track what was happening with this vehicle and pinpoint the problem. Also, there are some action buttons, so you can stop or reassign or whatever. The report is just another Aurelia page which opens in a new tab, but it does show the same in printable mode.
Did you have any things that were hard to do with Aurelia, or things that gave you headaches, or?
Yeah, yes, sure. Yeah, so the biggest, I think the biggest problem was this grid. We really, based on our experience, we always used things like Telerik or stuff like that. We were trying to find something which suits our need in this case, and we couldn't, at least, I believe like half a year ago we did last attempt. And then creating it on our own is a bit of, yeah, struggle, especially because we changed it several times. And of course we don't support all the scenarios that the typical grid would support, but we do only what we want. Then it really works nicely for like, the binding syntax is very good. We use converters a lot. We use, yeah. For example, yeah, I didn't show the multi-language thing, but there is a flag here. So you just switch the language, and then it doesn't work. I know. Okay, it's just a delay. So it just switches without even page reload. It just rebinds everything, and then it just works. So that's very fun. The map page, if you look at the code, I'm not planning to show a lot of code today. If you don't have any specific questions, but it's quite messy because we didn't find a good pattern to organize all those dot interactions. It's not something like a form or anything that you find in examples. So it's more or less all manual creation of those and then sending events from one there to another. Because, for example, this pane interacts with the map. So when you do something here and then you go here, you can click, pick it here, then start hovering this, and then it also hovers on the left side. It would be nice if someone would come up with a guideline how to do this kind of things. But I guess that's just specific to our application. So code-wise, I would say the amount of code that we write is surprisingly low, related to just rendering and what Aurelia should do. And templates feel natural, so when we write it, most of the time it works. Some struggles as always with two-way data bindings. When you bind something in two places and then you change it in one, whether the other one will pick it up correctly. And like, it also might depend on the life cycle events when you load the page. The first time, what we saw, the first time the events happen slightly different than when you load the second time, like navigate back. There were some bugs sitting there. What else? Yeah. If we could get some grid control, which would fit our needs, I would be happy, I would say, with the whole application.
So is the application live?
Yes.
How was the response from customers?
So this application replaces a very old application that I used to use for like 6 years or 7 years. They are very excited about the UI part. They are not very excited about some other parts which we shortcutted for now. But they don't have to do anything with UI or the look and feel of the application is great, and they are all looking forward to switching, but some of them couldn't yet because other reasons, business.
Has the maintainability of the application increased since you used Aurelia, or?
So this is greenfield. It's hard to measure. The old one was created by the other company, so we don't have a history of that one. Of course.
Team, is the team enthusiastic about the framework? Do they like it? Do they like working with it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yeah, it's also because most people don't have good comparison. They never created similar size application with Angular or React. So they are like, of course there are problems or misunderstanding, and things change now and then. But overall, I would say if we purely measure the time that we spend on fighting with framework or finding out how to implement a feature, I think it's like 5% of all the time that we spent on the application, so it's acceptable. There is no like constant search to switch to something else.
How many people are working on the project?
7-ish.
And what are some of the problems you want to share with us?
Yeah, I think I already did.
Because you said there are some problems, but then you stopped, but you didn't mention. I mean, I understand that you said some of the people are really native, which means that they don't have a better comparison, but you said there are issues, and then you stopped, but you didn't mention 1 or 2 issues that you are dealing with. Yeah,
the lack of controls, for example. You cannot just buy some nice goodies. What companies are used to do, you start a C# project, you buy Telerik for $2,000, and then you have all the controls that you can imagine, and then of course,
a lot of off-the-shelf components available.
Yeah, and they get support, and you can call them and ask, how do I do this? They have examples and so on. And here okay, I need this sorting to work a different way. Go do it.
And what were your specific issues with Telerik? Because we have, I think, 4 or 5 Aurelia projects in production right now. All are using Telerik and UI, and we had almost no issues with it apart from some virtualization stuff. So I'm just curious why did you ditch Telerik?
The blocker was SignalR support. When we tried to integrate with SignalR, we got performance issues. We contacted them. We have support with them, and they said that your scenario is not supported.
Oh yeah, that's classic. That's classic Telerik response, isn't it?
Yeah. And then we said about that's our main screen that we need to work this way.
You had a big data grid that needed to be SignalR bound.
Yeah.
We did one thing with SignalR, and it was a scheduler, and it worked remarkably well, but it wasn't that big of a data set, so I guess it would be unfair to compare.
Yeah, we need a grid which has several thousand rows, and they are all update. And you only update what you see. You should only update what you see, otherwise it's very slow. And they can also, like, one row can disappear, another row can appear in the middle of the grid, because over time some trips start, some trips finish, depending on your sorting. And they were basically repopulating it every time something comes in, or something like that. Also, the API didn't look very nice. The data source, I don't remember the details, but the data source, you had to do a lot of code compared to like binding to something like a repeater.
I'm used to working with their WPF suite, so the rat controls, and compared with the rat controls in WTF, I think it's an amazing product.
Okay. Yeah, we also used rat controls with mixed success, but no, they did the job in the end. It was fine. They are sometimes hard to use.
It's true. It's much more cost effective to buy something that does 90% of the thing you want to do it, instead of building such thing yourself.
Because they do a lot of things. They were also quite heavy when we included Can Do UI. I think the size got 5 times bigger than before with the whole Aurelia and everything that we used before. Because it wants to include everything, we did spend, I think, a week trying to minimize the footprint, because we only needed grid. We didn't need the whole Canada thing. That worked in the end, I think, and it was still like 1 meg of JavaScript. But our customers don't care that much. They load it once and then it works. But still, yes.
In hindsight, anything that you would have changed on your architecture or tooling or anything?
Yeah, the tooling is fine. I guess we should start looking at CLI. Looks nice, but overall we spent like first month setting everything up, TypeScript, gulp, work together, tests, and then it just works. Architecture-wise, of course, you always want to rewrite everything after one year. And we did rewrite it already, I think. But the code-wise, the biggest problem is that map page. So I would maybe look at some not related to Aurelia, but maybe more inspired by React, Redux kind of things, where you don't end up doing a lot of event handling ad hoc, and you don't end up in a state and you don't know how you got there, kind of thing. It's quite messy. The map page is quite messy, but it's not really a fault. Maybe only that it doesn't provide anything for this scenario, but hey, it's all more or less pure leaflet manipulations with all leaflet controls, and it's nice compared to what we had again in the Silverlight ages, but not always trivial to do interactions.
I was the part moving from doing a lot of WPF development towards suddenly needing to do CSS and HTML or more that side of, because we have some people that are more working towards the back end, and they hate to fight with CSS because it doesn't do what they want. So did you experience all of that?
Yeah, we were lucky, or at least careful enough to hire a guy who knows all those tricks with CSS and HTML. So most of those 7 people don't do anything with CSS, and HTML is mostly like I'll copy it from here. It works. With Bootstrap, it's more or less readable what you get. So you can, once you understand their cryptic names, you can follow what you are copy pasting. So, but CSS, yeah, that's hard. This one looks quite nice, but when we started, it was, and everybody did a small portion of it. It was, of course, a mess. Yeah, so CSS is not a big concern. We use a theme called, I think, admin design.
What's the name of the team again?
Admin design.
Okay.
So we again take some ideas from there, change some things, but it looks. If you go to admin design theme, you will notice the menu and the drop downs and toggles and things like that. So yeah, I would say in Silverlight it was also quite complex, all those resource templates, and maybe this is even easier.